Welcome, Casey Tug, Tableau, July 2021 meetup. I'm Erin. You see Sean. You'll get to hear from Lucas in a little while. Just a few quick housekeeping things. We are going to take August off. So start school, enjoy time with your family, survive the heat, watch some Olympics, root for the Royals, do whatever you're going to do. And then we will all be back in September this fall. So we went ahead and put in the chat, if you were here right when we started, or questions, what do you want to see this fall? So as we're kind of going through topics for what our meetup topics and themes should be, let us know what you want to see. And also, I know you've heard this before, but we'll say it again. If you're getting tired of Sean, Lucas, Erin, Jay presentations, we would love to be able to include more folks in presenting. So here's my invitation. Reach out to me or Sean or Lucas or Jay. Even if you just want to kind of float an idea, I promise we won't corner you into presenting anything you're uncomfortable with. But if you are even interested in kind of starting the conversation of, hey, my team or I might be just interested in exploring what does it look like to present, we would love to include folks as we go into the fall with those presentations. So with that, we will go ahead and get started today. We've got a big lineup. We'll start with Sean with tips for C-suite dashboards, which I know many of us have had experience designing, so that'll be great. We'll hand it over to Lucas. He'll talk us through new features, both in desktop and server, which will be great. And then I will wrap it up with kind of going analog for getting started with Tableau, and then what that process is like to go ahead and build something you've sketched actually in Tableau. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass it on over to Sean.
All right.
And we'll go from there.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. All right. So let me get situated here. Where did my, it's all right. We'll figure it out. All right. So hello, Kansas City. How you doing? Happy Monday. I had to catch myself. We usually do Tuesday meetings, but here we are on a Monday. So excited to be here. We're going to talk about C-suite dashboards and what you can do to help your dashboard stand out with its simplicity. This presentation is designed for people who are creating dashboards for the highest level of stakeholder at your organization or your place. Now, that's not to say that some of the things that I say in here cannot be translated or transformed into a lower level dashboard, but these are the ways to do that. So real quick introductions. Most of you know who I am, but for any of those who are new, I'm Sean Miller. I am a lead BI developer at Cerner, Tableau certified desktop professional, been working in Tableau since 2015. At Cerner, I run an analytics center of excellence, and I am also in charge of a pretty large analytic rollout of all of our standard electronic medical record analytic reporting strategy at Cerner, which is called Cerner Unified Analytics and Reporting. So that's a little about me. That's what I do by day. And then by night, or in quotes, night, right? You can find me at Hipster Ninja, where I do all things Tableau community. I'm a Tableau social media ambassador, which means I tweet a lot and I post a lot on LinkedIn. So come find me, come hang out and connect with me. You can find me on all the social medias at Hipster Ninja. Regarding other things in the fun Tableau community that I do, obviously I help do this, the Kansas City Tableau user group. I'm also a Workout Wednesday coach, and I've also teamed up with Zen Master Lindsay Betzendahl for Project Healthviz. So come check us out and show off some of your skills. I also have a blog and YouTube channel at hipstervizninja.com and YouTube channel at hipstervizninja. So as you can tell, I have a huge and debatably unhealthy passion for teaching data viz and of course Tableau. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about 4 tips. It is not an exhaustive list. If you there are so many other things that go into building a dashboard, but these things are the ones that I think are the most relatable, the easiest to execute, and will satisfy your stakeholder, right? So we're going to talk about KPIs. We're going to make your KPIs meaningful and actionable. We're going to talk about contextual views. So the KPIs are just a teaser for the main event, which are these contextual views. We're going to talk about why it's important to limit your filters and interactivity. And this is a something that I've kind of been toying with in my mind with this idea of, do you want to give your users a data buffet, or do you want to give them a data platter? So C-suite people, they need the numbers, they need the high level stuff. They don't need a bunch of filters. Even if they say they do, they don't. They probably won't use them. So by being deliberate and intentional with your filters and interactivity, you'll be able to give your stakeholder exactly what they want. And then lastly, we need to make it consumable, right? And basically what that means, it needs to be designed for consumption. So all of these 4 things are going to go in hand. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about each of these 4 things. And then as a bonus, I'm actually going to show you real world, quote unquote, real world examples on Tableau Public of expertly designed executive dashboards that cover these 4 topics. All right, so here we go. First one, let's kick this off. KPIs. We all know what KPIs are, right? Key performance indicators, bands, whatever you like to call them. But first thing you need to know about bands or KPIs is not every single measure in your database or in your table should be a KPI. You need to be discreet. You need to be intentional with your KPIs. If you're, there's a meme, I tried to find it, I couldn't, of a dashboard of KPIs. And then what ends up happening is you have a dashboard that monitors, you have a KPI dashboard that monitors the KPIs. If you get too crazy with it, it can get confusing. Just keep in mind that, right? So not every single measure on your dashboard has to be a KPI. Again, some people will think that is necessary, but it is not. And sometimes it can get confusing, and it can just, it gets really unfortunate and very tiring, literally mentally tiring, the more things you try and put on a dashboard. So keep that in mind. Number 2, make your KPIs actionable, right? Sometimes, these are all kind of related together. So make them actionable. What is an actionable KPI? Well, if you need to know, the number of widgets that are sold, then what does that mean, right? If you load up a dashboard and it says we sold 53 widgets, okay, is that good? Is that bad? Is that indifferent? Is that on pace? What is it? It's just, so you need to give them more. You need to give them more than the number. But obviously the number is the star, so make the number big, bold, in your face, right at the top. Or I've seen a lot of people do, that's probably the preferred and probably most popular position for KPIs is right along the top, because we have, if you talk about schemas, psychological schemas, we know that the most important information is right at the top, and that's where we start reading subconsciously, right? So that's why they're there. Other things I've seen people do left sidebar KPIs. Those can work really well, just depending on the layout of your dashboard. But you want those KPIs to be unmistakably KPIs. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, raw aggregates are not enough. 53 widgets. Okay, is that good? Is that bad? Try to use some of those pre-attentive attributes to help tell the story of those numbers. Is that good? Is that bad? Are we on pace? Are we on what have you, right? So let's go take a look at some KPIs. So first, Tableau Public. Obviously, I shouldn't need to talk about how great Tableau Public is, but one thing that I will say about how great Tableau Public is they have greatly improved the search capabilities of Tableau Public. If you are a longtime user of Tableau Public and you've ever tried to search something, you know that it was a painstaking experience. They have greatly improved it, and it is excellent. So go check out the new search feature. I know it sounds like a weird thing to go do, but just go try the new search feature, and you can you'll be amazed at what these new results are. But what I want to say about this, if you go search executive dashboard, there are over 10,000 vises that result in that search. And not all of them are great. But let's take a quick view at some of the good ones, right? Let's take a look at this one. This is by Thiago, and we can. What do we like really quick up here? Well, it's really he's titled it performance overview, right? And lastly, he's put them really big numbers in bold. But again, remember, the number is the star. Number 3 of KPIs, the number is the star. The numbers here are the biggest and blackest and have, they pop out. Then you have some contextual, text labels and headers, right? So it's like, I see this number, and then I was like, what does that number do? Oh yeah, that's the year-to-date sales. Okay, then think raw aggregates aren't enough. This also means that we are up 316,000 versus the prior year. Our year-to-date average discount is down 0.9% from the previous year, right? So again, we are obviously there are lots of measures in here, but not all of them are KPIs. We're only showing the top 4, or not top 4, but we're just showing 4 of them. We're making them actionable by giving these little subheaders. We're making the numbers the star because they are the biggest and darkest numbers on the dashboard, and the aggregates aren't enough, right? So we're giving some kind of we're doing some average days to ship, right? So we're doing some math. We're not just taking it and summing it or that kind of thing. So if we look at we take another look at this one. This is a dashboard that I did for Project Healthviz. It is a healthcare related dashboard. One of the things that I did is I chose to select, basically using a set action. I put the top 5. I selected the top 5 specialties, and I made them its own set, and then I basically compared that to the overall number, right? So the overall big number here is 17.2 million admissions. 12 million of those come from our top 5 specialties, right? So again, the aggregates aren't enough. Show context, those types of things. If we take a look at this, again, this just shows that you don't have to have your executive dashboards don't always have to look so so rigid. This author has gone into a separate tool to create some shadowboxing, some outlines, and you can see that again. The KPI is as big as it is, and it's white, so it pops out, so it has the biggest contrast. So that's just a few examples of really good KPIs. So now what we'll talk about is contextual views. That's our second tip that we're going to cover today. Contextual views. What are contextual views? Well, they're the rest of the story. The KPIs are the teaser. KPIs get you started. The KPIs are there to kind of whet the palate or whet the appetite, if you will. Everything else comes after that, right? So these are what those are. Now, having said that, the views and the KPIs need to complement each other, both in order and what you're actually showing, right? So if you have basically, obviously it sounds like, well, duh, but you'd be surprised how many times I've taken a look at various dashboards and I'll have a KPI, but then there will be no supporting visual, or vice versa. You'll just have a visual that has no tie back to any of the KPIs. So just keep in mind that we need to have something that helps the end user go a little bit deeper, right? So after they see the KPI, they see the teaser, it's like, okay, I'm interested in this now. Where do I go from here? Give me, right? That's what these contextual views are going to help you accomplish. And yes, order does matter, right? So what do we mean by this? It means don't hide your trend graph. Don't hide your trend line in the bottom left or in the bottom right. Put it top right, because we want to be able to see really quickly, are we trending good? Are we trending bad? How are we doing? Also, it also, when I talk about order, what I'm also talking about is the complexity of your charts. If you have a scatter plot, scatterplots to some people can be very confusing or very hard to read initially. Don't put that in a place where they're going to have to spend a lot of mental capacity trying to figure out what that chart means every time. You kind of want to, again, this is all part of data storytelling, and you want to guide your users through a story, and you want to make them, you want to make them an enjoyable experience. That's what I'm saying. Again, yes, and it tells the story of the KPI, right? So we have this KPI, here's that number, how did we get there? Where do we go from here? All of those questions are going to be answered in your contextual views. All right, so let's go take a look at our contextual views. If we go, this is probably one of the most, it has several thousand views, several hundred favorites on Tableau Public. This is Lindsay Poulter's Washington Math Authority dashboard. It was a Workout Wednesday way back in the day in 2016, but really, really nice, right? So what she's done here, each block is a KPI, and she's added several different pieces of information for each of those KPIs. So she tells the number, which is 8231 for bus fleet reliability, but then she also tells you, okay, well, compared to last month, it was, or the goal, or you can change this up, right? I think this is the goal for this one, but you could easily just say, okay, well, what was this last year? Or what was this last month? So you can kind of see that. And then what she's done is she's colored each of the bars based on their performance to the reference line. Additionally, once you see that, then you're like, okay, well, how did we get here? Well, right under that is a really nice monthly trend line for each KPI. So you can see, how did we get here? Were we always trending this? Is this an anomaly? Is this something to worry about? Like this, you can see there's a nice upward trend happening with this. But then you get down here, it's like, okay, we always hover around this. We always hover around the average, and we hover around where we're at. We kind of have some bumps and bruises, or we have some good months and bad months. But for the most part, we can see that we're not really. This I would be very interested in, right? This big spike right here, that would be something I would be really concerned with. You can see we're pretty much staying flat. Let's see. Again, we have in Aleshola's dashboard, we have this big number here, the current year, and then again we're showing here is a month over month view compared to last year. So you can see how we're trending both. You can see we both trend up towards the end of the year, but you can see that we are continuing that growth. which is nice. Let's see. This is a really nice one by lukestanky. Really excellent. This is more of a table view, but still has all of those components that I've talked about. He's got really nice KPIs. He's got context to his KPIs, and then he's got additional details for each subcategory, right? So he's got a lot going on here, lots of context to help, again, go back to, and if you look, each column in here, lost revenue, you know, we've got a KP, we've got everything that ties back to the KPIs in here. This is a really nice example of what's of a KPI dashboard. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is filters and interactivity. This is probably one of the most controversial, and it probably might ruffle some feathers, but it is very important. If you can hone this, you will have won data visualization in business, right? If you can master this, if you can find the right balance between making your stakeholder happy and limiting the number of filters and interactivity to exactly what they need, you'll have solved the great problem of data visualization. We are all still struggling with it, so I wish you all luck. But so first thing I like to say about this one, both filters and interactivity, too much of a good thing does not equal a better thing, especially when you get into interactivity. Everybody loves interactivity. I remember when I first started out with Tableau, and I could do all this cool filtering to get down to exactly what I wanted. And also, what I found was it's really easy, especially not only in the development of it, but in the actual use of a dashboard that has a lot of interactivity. You can get lost really, really quickly. And, you know, both from a developer, because you don't name your filter, you don't name your actions, right? And then you're like, oh, I need to go change this. Well, which action is it? And then you end up erasing all of them and starting all over again, right? And then as an end user, you get there and it's like, well, how do I get back? Like, I didn't mean to click on that. What do I do now? So just think about those. And then with filters and too much of a good thing, yes, people will tell you that they need a filter. They actually don't. One of the things that I strive by is that I strive for in a dashboard as much as I can is if I have a contextual view that has a filter action on that dimension, it does not need to be a drop-down filter. Pause for effect. Right? So I know that can be controversial. I know that we all, boy, that would be a dream world, wouldn't it? But if you can get to that, and that, I think that just comes with how comfortable users are with Tableau, that you don't need to set a filter just by using the dropdown, right? You can use it by interactivity. So think about those things and do your best. Be intentional with your interactivity. Be intentional with your filters, right? If it needs to be a drop-down filter, then by golly, be a drop-down filter. If it needs to be a radio button, then do that, right? But just, you know, don't just always throw your multi-select value list or drop-down in there. Sometimes sometimes you know exactly what people are going in to search for. So you can just type it in. It can be a wildcard match. Don't forget, here's a quick tip for you. If you do use multi-value drop-down lists, always, and I don't know why Tableau doesn't do this by default, but it's the world we live in, right? Always show the apply button if you're doing a multi-value list. Always. If that's the one thing you take away from this, then I will have called this a success. It will make your users a lot happier, and especially as you get into larger data sets, It will run a lot faster if you do the apply, show the apply button for multi-value select. Spread the interactive love. What do I mean by that? Well, it doesn't always have to be filter actions. Don't forget about the interactivity. Don't forget about the highlight action. Don't forget about the menu action. Don't forget about set actions. You know, there are lots of different ways to use interactivity with Tableau. I would encourage you to practice using different types of interactivity to see what happens. You can really take a dashboard from boring to wow if you just change up one filter action to a highlight action or something along those lines, or you add a highlight action to just help show some connections, right? And then lastly, don't forget about interactivity for navigation. I have seen some really excellent examples of workbooks that have a dashboard that is basically a springboard, right? Use a KPI dashboard as a launch pad for further discovery. That's what we try and do at Cerner in every possible case. Is we'll have a KPI dashboard. The KPIs will be from various domains and various subject matters. We'll put them all in a KPI dashboard, and then that will become the launch pad. So as a KPI, as an end user, I'll say, you know, I want to see, oh, number of encounters, right? Maybe that's one thing that I want to drill into. I'll click that KPI, and that will take me to my encounter detail dashboard where I have a lot more analytic options for that. And then we have kind of and then we have workflows to get back to that dashboard, to that original KPI dashboard, to start your analysis over on a different metric or however you want. But definitely think about interactivity for navigation. All right, so let's take a look at some of that. We'll stay here on Luke's dashboard to start off. But what you can see is limited filtering and interactivity, right? There's not a lot of tooltips going on. Everything is there. Interactivity or tooltips is interactivity, so keep that in mind as well. Not everything needs a tooltip. I know I might enjoy a little heated debate with people about that one, but not every single mark deserves or needs a tooltip. But again, for interactivity, we're showing everything right here. But if you want to see more detail, he's got a button for navigation right here. It will take you to more detail right there. One thing that I really liked about Thiago's, if we kind of drill down in here, is you know, we've got here's some really high level information about this, but you can see, you know, right below the fold, right before the scroll point on this web page, he kind of teases the stakeholder with strategic overview. Oh, what's that? Well, we come down here and immediately you're like, okay, this not only looks really nice, Thiago did a really great job designing this, but you can tell that these are bespoke charts, right? These are not your typical charts. We've got a Pareto on this side and we've got a matrix on the other. It might take your users a little bit more time to see and understand and then use these two charts as it would be to use these, right? Everybody can kind of understand what these two charts are doing and what these four are doing. These might take a little bit more doing. So he's kind of teased you into kind of, okay, when you're ready, you know, scroll down and, you know, prepare for more analytic rigor, right? If you want that or need that. So that's a really good one. I really like that one. So again, oh yeah, when I talk about highlighting, right? So here are basically when we're talking about these specialties, here are the top 5 right here. And then what I'm doing is I've added highlight actions so that as you hover on bubbles across this dashboard, you can see where they connect in the other charts that are showing different measures. As opposed to, right, and if I were to use this, and several years ago, whenever I was brand new to Tableau, I'd be like, oh, that's a filter action. I'd click on that, and then everything would filter to that specialty that I can't pronounce, and which is fine, right, in some cases. But what happens with a filter action? You're just left with that one thing, and you don't get to see it. You don't get to see its position in the grand scheme of things. So that's why I like the highlight action. It allows you to kind of it allows for good discovery in context, right? All right, so we are almost done with our 4 tips. We're on our last one. We're going to make our dashboards consumable. We're going to design our dashboards for consumption. What does that mean? We need to think about, and we need to spend some time with our dashboard and our stakeholder asking questions. How is this going to be viewed? That, especially nowadays, could have multiple answers than it used to in the past. It could be viewed on a desktop, could be viewed on a an ultra wide 1080p monitor. It could be viewed in a conference room. It could be viewed in a boardroom. It could be viewed on a phone. It could be all of those. It could be one of those. It could be a combination of those. The answers to those questions are going to influence the decisions made on how you're going to design this dashboard. When will it be viewed? Is this an every morning? Is this a every week, every day, every month, every quarter, every year? All of those things are going to have an impact on those. What do I mean about why is it important to understand when? The answer to this question is going to help you decide how much helper text to put on your dashboard, right? If you are building a dashboard, a KPI dashboard that's going to be viewed every single day, I don't need to put how to view every single I don't need to put how to read this chart or how to use this chart type or those types of things, because that's a KT. That's a 30-minute sit down. Here's this. Send me an email if you have any questions. But after 2 or 3 days, you're gonna understand what we're talking about, and you're gonna see it every day, and it's gonna become second language to you. However, that same dashboard, I'm only going to be using this once every quarter, and I'm doing some I'm doing some analysis that is a little bit higher level than, or a little bit more granular than just kind of what are my top 5. Then yeah, you might need to put a little bit of helper text to help reorient your user into how to use this. This question is also going to tie into our next one, which is how often is the data refreshed? Again, these are kind of like, these sound like common sense questions, but you'd be surprised how many people say, I need to look at this every single day, but the data doesn't refresh until every other day or every week, right? Well, then maybe we've got a disconnect here. Maybe we need to update the data refresh schedule, or maybe we just need to we need to realign your expectations with how often you need to view this dashboard. So understand your data pipelines, your data workflows, and how often your data is being refreshed for your KPI dashboards. And then lastly, again, I have this idea in the back of my head for features of Tableau that are often overlooked or not used. I would put device designer at the top of that list or close to it. I think story points is probably the #1 feature that isn't used or at least isn't used as properly as it should. So device designer is great. Device designer allows you to essentially designed for multiple devices for a dashboard. And when I say device designer, I do not mean mobile designer. It can also go bigger, right? You can have a desktop, you can have a monitor size, you can have you can make it as big or as little as you want, and basically you can have one workbook that can scale your view. It's kind of the way you kind of you can kind of think of device designer as that range dashboard size if you use that, which we use it at Cerner currently. We've been kind of toying with moving over to the device designer route, depending on what we need, because of some of the features that are coming that we want to take advantage of that don't play nicely with a range dashboard. But having said that, think about this, spend some time, practice, right? Practice using this, understand some of the intricacies of device designer. What can you do? What can't you do? What should you do differently? What are some things that you might need to think about? But before you go and build a desktop dashboard, then you go try and build a mobile dashboard, and now you've got two links that you need to figure out depending on where the user is consuming this, which link to use. See if device designer is the right option for you. So if we look at some real world examples of this, what we can see, again, this is a really great idea for a mobile dashboard, a mobile KPI dashboard. So you can see we've got 4 metrics here, and you can see what those high level numbers are. But obviously the plus number means if I see a plus, if I click it, I should see a minus. So if I click it, it's going to refresh. And now I've got cards that come down and show me just a very simple trend, a bar chart trend for each of those metrics. And as you would expect, as I click on other things, as I click on other metrics, the previous one moves away, right? And so you could have this as part of a device designer, and then whenever whenever your stakeholder goes and looks at this same dashboard on a desktop device or a tablet, he's not going to see this view. He's going to see a little bit more because you've got more real estate, right? Here's another great mobile design. This dashboard could easily be used for multiple devices. Going bigger, right? You could easily go bigger. I wouldn't necessarily go smaller with this one. That's probably the max or the minimum size I would allow for this one, but just think about those kinds of things. Again, this one is really nice as well. And again, you could probably easily switch this to a mobile dashboard where everything is, everything is lined up vertically as well. So device designer is fun and it should be embraced, not feared. All right, so a couple other things as we kind of land here. Just quickly go over. These are the 4 tips that we talked about. Think about your KPIs, make your KPIs actionable and meaningful. Contextual views, KPIs are the teaser, and your stakeholder is going to want some insight into why the numbers are what they are. Give them those views to help tell the story. Again, do you want to give them a data buffet or do you want to give them a data platter? Do you want to give them something served up? I remember, quick story time. I remember one of the very first dashboards I built. I was so proud. I was so happy that I did this. It was a great, it was a really nice dashboard. It had all the filters on it, and it had a bunch of parameters, and I gave it to my stakeholder and said, this is awesome. Look at what I built. And it was never used at all because the stakeholder didn't want to go through every single time he wanted to go in. He didn't want to go through all that. I was the analyst. He wanted me to do the analysis and then serve up my findings, right? So think about that. Data buffet, data platter. And then lastly, Design for consumption. Make your dashboard consumable in every way that your stakeholder is going to use it, and you should be good. The last two things that I want to share with you are some resources from Adam McCann. If you want to learn a few different ways on how to visualize KPIs, he has a dashboard that I will drop into the chat. That is 20 unique ways to visualize dashboards or visualize KPIs. So there's that in the chat for everyone. Really nice. I really like, he's got different things going on. You know, you see a little area chart. He's got, you know, dots. He's got glow, which is really interesting. You know, a red outline, trend lines, really cool. Lots of different ways to visualize KPIs. So go check that out. And then lastly, there are several different types of dashboards, and Adam McCann, same author, built this really excellent blog post and example dashboards of and kind of created a taxonomy for dashboard creation. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat as well. It covers KPI dashboards, but it also covers use case and when you would use each one. So definitely check that out as well. So that's really cool. So let's check out the chat and see if there are any questions. Let's see. Good. People just taking notes. All right. Sean asked, does device designer get down to packet header levels to indicate the footprint of the device requesting? So there are a lot of words in there that I'm not aware of. Packets, I don't know what that means, but I do know I can help you. So if we go look, what I will do, let me open up a text editor real quick. And I'll just take mine. So let me show you how device designer works. And this might be fun for everyone here, just to see how device designer interprets what's actually put in. So basically, we all know that when we're in here, we can share a dashboard and we can get this embed code. All right. Let's see. There we go. All right. I'll bring my editor over here and I'm just going to paste this in here. Now, you can see that he's doing what you can see is there's this if statement in here, which I guess I wish it would have properly done this. So there we go. So variable div element, I'm kind of getting Cody language right now, but basically it's going to look at the size of the iframe in the embedded window, be that Tableau server or wherever you're embedding. And it basically has this if statement that says if your offset width is greater than this and less than this, then it will basically go and look for the device designer that has the proper dimensions in it. So I'm not familiar enough with coding this to kind of change this or kind of modify this or do other crazy things with this code, but I'm sure that there's a way that you could probably take this, modify it, and make it make it viewable, make it dynamic, however you want to do. So that is the very little that I know about the device designer parameter inputs. So hopefully that was helpful, Sean. All right, any other questions? Go ahead and drop those in the chat. Perfect, good job.
Sean, I've
All
got
right.
one just real quickly.
Mhm.
How long, so I feel like as you're working with C-suite folks, if they've never seen Tableau before, sometimes their requests are a little different than folks who maybe have gotten started with Tableau and kind of have a sense of what they can ask for. So any thoughts that you might have about how long does it take, how long does it take you to kind of train up a C-suite individual to become a really good partner in designing? And then maybe for folks who, you're working with, someone who's brand new in the C-suite, they haven't worked, before with Tableau, what are some questions that you like to ask them to make sure you're getting the information that you need?
Sure. Yep. So start with the question, right? So what are you trying to do? What are we trying to measure? What is this dashboard ultimately going to do? If you work in an agile environment, what is the user story? As a blah blah blah, I would like to blah blah blah, so that blah blah blah, right? Get that honed in, get that nailed down, and then from there, once we have that, then it's a whiteboarding session, and it's okay, so what are the dimensions? What are the things that you're going to want to that you're going to want to slice and dice by, right? What are some of the important types of dimensions, measures, date filtering, those types of, what are you going to want to do with this data in this dashboard to get the answers that you need? Another question that goes a long way is, how are you getting this data today? How are you getting these answers today? And actually have them don't tell me, actually show me what their process is if they can. And if it involves, well, I go to this report and I set these filters, and then I take a download of the data, and then I put it in Excel and I do this. Well, okay, how about I just give you a dashboard that does that? Is that something that you would be interested in? And usually they get pretty excited about that. And also, again, it's a matter of trying to think back to whenever I was young and coming up in my Tableau journey, how I kind of got around some of those things, is just kind of, I always like to start with a conversation, right? I don't like to think of what are the constraints of Tableau or what are the things that Tableau can do. Let's talk about what you want, and then I'll go and I'll research and I'll come up with some things, and I'll have several prototypes of what I think satisfies that answer. And then from there, let's get something out there so that you can start using it. And then let's meet up recurringly and let's see if we can make any enhancements or improvements on it. So it's very much a conversation for me.
Awesome. And it looks like we have a couple more questions in
Cool.
the chat.
All right, is the shadowboxing? Yes, the shadowboxing in this one. So I think let's see, here it is. Yeah, so he took this, he probably created this in Illustrator or PowerPoint or some other tool, and then created an image of that, imported that image as a background image, and then floated everything on top of the background image. That is the most common practice when you get into certain aesthetics like this, is floating dashboards, essentially. Let's see, next. How would you suggest to go about steering stakeholders away from the table-heavy views like Excel and more towards data visualization? Well, one of the examples that I showed was this one. This is very table. I like to meet, I also like to meet my users in the middle, right? So if they like tables, let's see what we can do to give you a table, but also start sprinkling in some Tableau coolness and some of the data visualization best practices, and how there are still numbers in this dashboard, right? But there's also contextual views. And there are, it's like, okay, so I see what my profit is, I see that my chair profit is $2,000, which is up 208%. Great. But as you can see, it has a lot of variability to it over the last 12 months. So that would be hard to find in a table, but at least I'm giving you the numbers, and then I'm giving you some context into those numbers. So this is a great example, and I actually have several examples of dashboards that I've built at work that that are very kind of text heavy. But again, I am still using some of those data visualization best practices to kind of start changing the mindset of what you can do with data like this. You bet. And lastly, before we move on, because I know we're kind of getting on, is there a link to a good tutorial on design tips for Tableau? I'm looking for pixels, colors, and opacities. Yes. So definitely go check out Lindsay Betzendahl. She's doing a lot of really cool things in Figma, which is a third-party tool, but it is free. And she goes into a lot of the design type of aspects of building dashboards. So definitely go check out her website, vizzendata, all one word, .com. And I think she's got some videos out there as well as blog posts for data stuff, for data design. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Sean. That's awesome. That's always so much fun to learn from you. Okay, so with that, we are ready to jump on over to Lucas. And I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Sure.
My audio coming across okay?
Yeah, you sound great. You are all set.
Awesome. Perfect. So I'll try to move quick here so I can pass the baton back to you, Erin, for some additional great content. Thanks for that, Sean. So for those that don't know me, I'm Lucas. I've been working at Ericsson as a senior BI developer, primarily with Tableau for God knows how many years at this point. I think dating back to version 7, give or take. So been in this space for quite some time. The goal for today is just to cover some of the new releases that have been rolled out within 2021.2 and also 2021.1. I'll show you guys how to find which ones those are instead of having to just hunt for them within the application itself. And just kind of give a quick demo of each one of them, or at least a summary version of the ones I think are more appealing to the overall users. There's going to be a lot of new connectors, integration with Salesforce and Einstein capabilities, but because that doesn't really fit with everybody or the majority of the users, I'll just keep things more to the desktop and also high-level server feature level as well. So with that said, let's jump on to the first one, which is quick LODs. Now this would only take me 20 seconds to explain if I were to just jump onto that. So I'll give a brief recap on what LODs are and how to use them, if that's something that you're not aware of. So here's a quick visualization. By the way, I'm using the regional packaged workbook with Tableau for these examples. So here we have this flight information with the % of delayed flights on each one of these carriers. I see Frontier at 25%, but then when I go into, and let's say add airport name into the mix, we see those results specific to certain airports. Now, that's great. I see ExpressJet at 27%, but let's say I wanted to know what the % delayed for the actual airport is, but I still want the visibility for what the carriers are. If I remove the carrier name, I do see that Baltimore, Washington is about 18%, but once I bring in carrier back, that level of detail kind of gets lost. So for us to address that, we would then write an LOD formula, which in this case would be fixed on airport name. And then here I want my delayed flights. Once we have this, I'll put the calculation on the screen. You'll see the same number repeats itself for all of the airport records at 18%, which is similar to what we were getting, or just rounded, when the carrier was not in here. So that's one way to use LODs, and of course, they could be of exclude, include multiple dimensions, and etc. So with 2021.1, what Tableau did for the lazy people like me, they just made building an LOD a little bit easier. So what you have to do, instead of typing all of that, you can just select one of the measures, hold the control key if you're a Windows user, or the command key on a Mac, drag it onto the dimension that you want to build that LOD on, and it auto-populates that for you. So now you have fixed of that combination. Where I think this falls a little bit short is because it only works for the fixed function. It doesn't work with exclude or include. I suspect that's something Tableau will eventually roll out here in future releases. And also for those statements where you might have multiple dimensions, it doesn't work for that either. So it's only a one-to-one at this time. So nothing too revolutionary here, but just know if you do need to write a lot of LODs, this is a quick way to do them without even having to open the context menu. The other way you could have done the same is just by holding control on both, then going into, right click, create, and then you'll have an LOD calculation that does that same thing for you. So just like on anything else in Tableau, there's a multitude of ways to do the same thing. So that's quickly LODs. Next one is show hide for elements on a dashboard. So if you've used the show hide buttons feature up to this point, you know that in order for you to, let's say, I'll bring in this chart that I just built, and I'll create a vertical container, put it inside me, and then I can hide this information by just double clicking on the container element and clicking add show hide button, which is going to give me this X symbol by default, and we can decide to show or hide. Now up to version 2021.2, this would only work for floating containers such as this one. The nice thing about it now is that you have this functionality for pretty much any element on the screen. So this is a big feature, especially for those people that are doing sheet swapping a lot through parameters. This makes life a lot easier in addressing that, and I'll show you how it works here in a bit. So let me remove this here. So for instance, this entire portion, it's not floating. I can just select, add the show or hide button, and then once we select that, you'll see the viz is resizing because it's how it's styled, and it's resizing to the entire screen. So for instance here, you could have this as your filter menu, for instance. Let me pick an image to show the filters. And then once the filter is opened, so we'll do close. I think I picked the right order. You make it a little bit bigger. And now you have kind of a filter bar, if you will, that you can use for that purpose. Similar to any elements on the screen. So for example, on this top map chart, excuse me, let me remove the fixed width. We could add this entire thing as a show or hide. And now you have your view based on how you set your controls for what you want to display. Just refocus as you wish it to. So this is exciting, especially for a lot of people, like I said, that use sheet swaps and have to build parameters or do parameter actions for certain things to open or close. You have this capability with your show or hide buttons as well. So that's the next one. So let me jump on to link to image. Within a dashboard element now, you'll see new options like ask data being one of them. Tableau continues to add functionality on the extension side. I won't go too far into this because, again, this is more of a niche type of thing. But before, you would have to go to the extension gallery in order to find out what extensions were available and all of that. So now you have this shortcut that by adding an extension onto the view, You can already see what's sandboxed, what's available by Tableau, what might be free, what's not, and add things straight here from your dashboard menu. So that's one. The other one is you can embed Ask Data. If that's something you or your organization uses, you can add that to your dashboards as well, instead of it just being standalone dashboards on the server or Ask Data lenses. But the one I'm covering here for this one is a new functionality for image. So let's say I'll put in an image. Before I do that, let me bring a vertical, and I'll bring an image element onto the view. Before, we could just do insert image to file, which of course would just link to an image that you had on your machine. Now there's the link to image option, which allows, of course, to link to a URL that's going to pull up the image. Some might think, well, this is the same thing as bringing in a web page object into the dashboard. The difference here is that we're linking to the actual image itself. We're not really displaying the entire content of a web page in order to get to what you want, whether you're doing an iframe or not. So some of the applications that could be really useful for this link to image, for example, let's say for corporate branding, let's say you have a company logo that you use and you have to add it to every single dashboard. If that logo ever changes, you need to go in and change every single image that you have on each one of those dashboards. If you have that image in a centralized location, for example, and you just link to it, that becomes much faster because it's going to propagate to every dashboard that you have. Linking to an image is also faster than just adding an image directly into your dashboard because the server doesn't have to download it in Tableau every time it refreshes. So if you're dealing with big images, that is something nice to leverage. But in addition to images, just for fun, something else that you can add here is GIFs. So for instance, I'll add this one here to this dashboard. I'm gonna put it to the side. Right now, you're not seeing it change, of course, because we're on desktop. There's not that capability, but once you publish this to the server, you would start seeing this this GIF do its thing, or GIF, depending on how you pronounce it, of course. Oops, sorry, wrong button. Let me just center this image a little bit better. And now, let me show you what this looks like on the browser. Just need to change my screen share here. New share. Let me see if my web browser comes up. So on that dashboard there, if you can see my browser screen, Erin, can you confirm it's up since I can see the preview?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yep, so now you have your GIF kind of doing its thing there in the middle of your dashboard. Now, don't see a lot of applications for something like this unless you want to add a little bit more context, but think about, we've seen maybe dashboards talking about the rain in Seattle. I think that was a big popular one on the Tableau gallery a couple of years ago. Maybe you could have a GIF of rain and that sits in the background of your entire dashboard, so it gives an additional visual element to the end user that's looking at it. So just one more thing that you can use for your advantage there as far as interactions go with the tool. With that said, I wanted to show you guys how to find new features to see where they're hidden and how to follow them through the web. So if you go to tableau.com/products/new features, it's going to give a quick recap of what everything is, and you can break it by your interest level, of course, whether it's server, desktop, prep, or etc. And you'll get a quick write-up here on what these things are. So I'm looking at 2021.2, like I said. I'm going to cover some of these that are on the screen, but one thing that I covered just recently here is the linked image, which I don't see on this screen, neither the show or hide for the objects that are also not here. So I don't really understand why Tableau does this. Kudos to Sean for showing me this tip, but there's actually another location that you can go to find actually all of the features that get deployed. And we'll go on a quick journey here to get there. So if you go to tableau.com, we'll start there and we'll go into resources and then support. And we'll go to Tableau Desktop since that's what I care for right now. I'll go to Manual and Guides. And here we have this, or just go to support/help. I guess we would have gotten there the same way. You can select the version of the tool that you're interested on. I'll jump onto Tableau Desktop and Web Authoring, click What's New. And here, finally, within this breadcrumb trail, you can see everything that got deployed, which is a lot more than what I was showing on that previous screen, including the create, show, hide buttons for any dashboard object, or the link to images as well. So if you're not out in the community and looking for new ways of doing things or not testing things out on your own, this is a great way to just come in and fully understand what's available and what has changed from one version to the other. So with that said, let me jump back over to Tableau. And I'll give it just a second for it to come up. Yep. And we'll talk about geo updates, the area calculation, and also changes to multiple map layers. So Tableau continues to invest on its geo capabilities and building upon its mapping functionality. That is something that, in my personal opinion, the tool lacked a little bit compared to everything else that it does. So with previous releases, we're starting to see more calculations to be released, like buffer, make point, make line. This time, we also have an option to calculate the area of a given polygon, which I'll demo here very soon, and also changes to map layers. So if you haven't heard of map layers yet, we did have, I think 2 tugs ago, we covered the new functionality on map layers available on 2020.4. Basically, we're no longer bound to just the dual axes of charts. We can add as many layers as we want to. I haven't seen a limit on how much we can do with it quite yet. Just know the more layers we add, the slower your view might get. Before I go too far into this, credit to dataviz.blog from Mark Reed for building this visual here that I'll use. So anyways, going back here to the layer control, we've all seen the selection items, the pinning and everything, but for map layers now, once you click on that icon, if the developer made that available, and I'll show how to disable that control as well, you can, of course, disable certain layers in case you want to do more of a guided view of your map. So let's say you want to start really high level and tell a story. By doing that, you could start with a map like this, and then the user navigates through that story that you're trying to tell with your map. I'm double clicking here by accident. So this is one of the features from map layers where you can enable versus disable the layer. But now on the server, the user can also disable the interaction with the layers. So what does that mean? Right now, I can select a charging point, which is my highest layer, but I'm not able to select my districts, which is under my house prices layer here at the very bottom. For me to get there without losing the context of all the layers that sit on top of it, I can just disable all of these for interaction. And now once I hover over, you can see I get down to what I want. So this will avoid unwanted clicks, for example, that you may be doing on a map, excuse me, because one thing is overlaid on top of the other, of course. So how do we enable this for the end user? Going on to map options on the top menu bar, you can just disable the layer control and publish it that way. That way the user can't make any selections if you want to make that fixed. Or if you want to enable it, you can just leave it there. And a reminder, if you publish something with all of the layers, for example, but as a user, I don't care to see the charging points on the map, I can also always save this as a custom view. And then next time when I log on, I'll still see the map without the charging points being displayed on the screen. So this is interesting, gives more flexibility for the users to consume this information on the server. Right, so jumping on to the area calculation, which is what I started mentioning on the new functionality. So in order to determine the size of a polygon, now if you're dealing with a spatial file or spatial data, we have a new formula that does just that. So it's, and I'll talk about what I'm doing here just shortly after I type this. So the acceptable formats, it's pretty straightforward. You just type in area, you'll pick the geometry field that you're going to use and pass one of the formats, which could be in miles, kilometers, meters, or feet in order to determine that, that location. You could always build a parameter, for example, for additional flexibility. Here I'm hard coding the concept for miles, but let's say we create a parameter just to enhance this a little bit more. Let's say measurement. I'll go into string and do either miles or kilometers. We'll change the display. And now on our area calculation, we can leverage that parameter instead. So we'll go to measurement, which will give us the same result. I'll expose that onto the view. And now that we have the area calculation, we can put it on, let's say, our tooltip to find out the area of our entire district. Once that process, let's add it to the tooltip here. Area size. And we'll do the area calculation plus the parameter name that we selected. So if this worked well, this area has 128 miles, 107 miles, 41 miles, 172 miles. So this is a pretty new feature. There's some debate out on the web as far as accuracy of this functionality. Great resource if you haven't checked him out on YouTube yet is, let me just confirm here what his handle is. I believe is Tableau Tim. He does great reviews on new features, and he's also talking about area, the area calculation on how calculating a curve on a flat map may not generate precise numbers, it's more of estimates. But again, I don't plan on going into that much of a detail, but that's how you would use the area calculation. So for example, if you wanted to do a proportion between that and maybe the number of chargers now, we could do something like that where, let's say the area calculation divided by the count distinct of charge device IDs. Oh, need to aggregate my field as well. We'll do the charger ratio. And we'll create a new layer in order to visualize that. So how do I create a new layer? I can just bring in my geometry field like I was showing before. Geometry, I'll load that onto the view. There it is. And on it, where's my ratio? Charger ratio. We can color the screen accordingly. And that didn't work well for me for some reason. Live demos.
I think you need to add a dimension on
yeah,
detail.
Good point. My district. Thanks for that, Sean. So here we start seeing the map with that additional layer that we created, doing the number of charges by the district using the area calculation. So more opportunities for usage here on the mapping space. Just go out and explore if this is something that you use with the tool. So jumping on to the final and last feature, I guess this is more server related. Unfortunately, I don't have a Tableau server on 2021.2 to give you a live demo on. So these are screenshots from manuals on Tableau. We now have this functionality called collections. What collections, the way I like to describe collections, they are like personal workspaces, if you will, where you can collect a bunch of assets on the server and build your own, like I said, workspace. So you could combine Tableau prep flows, workbooks, data sources. What else could go in there? Metrics, as well as data lenses and whatnot. So a nice feature of that, you'll see here, that's where it shows up on the left-hand side menu. for collections is that different from projects where everything is permission based within a project, a collection can, I feel like I'm just repeating the name of the feature, is a collection of different pieces from each one of those projects. So you can, if there's if we're thinking about a specific group function like dashboard best practices or onboarding materials for someone that just joined the company, you don't need to create projects specific to those folks or a new employee onboarding like it's on the screen. You can just tag or add those elements to your collection and then visit those pages, those workspaces that you created. So as far as it goes, let me show you here on the second page. Adding something to a collection, you just go into the element that you want to add, you select, go into add actions, and pick the add to collections dropdown. Same thing to remove. Once it's been added, of course, you'll just click on them and hit remove from the collection. And then the most important piece here, in my opinion, is as far as permissions go, you can only give people view permissions to your collections. Nobody will be able to modify what's on a collection that you've created. And permissions to the actual content do not get overwritten because you shared the collection with someone. So if I create a collection that has my map layers dashboard on it, and I share it with Sean, but Sean doesn't have access to the actual dashboard, he won't be able to get to it at all. So that's not going to exceed whatever permissions have been set to the original content, which ensures security of your server content. And you can also, like I said, just share the collection with others. If you can make it public or just have it private for you. So if you want to share, you can do that with many people and send a note, just simply like a subscription would be with others as well. So that's a kind of a quick overview, in addition to, like I said, connectors and enhancements to ask data and explain data that are constantly being worked on by Tableau that you'll see with version, especially 2021.2. So that's what I had. So I'll look at some questions here. Let's go from the bottom from Felicia. Yeah, collections can be shared. It can, as we're seeing here, really wish I could do a live demo on it, but can't do that right now. My organization is upgrading to 2021.1, so it's almost on purpose. Is collections like Pinterest for Tableau? I want to say yes, but I am not a Pinterest user. So if Sean or Erin, if you guys are more into Pinterest and can either confirm or deny that, that would be nice.
I wouldn't necessarily say, like, is it Pinterest-esque? Yes. Is it Pinterest? No. So, I think what I like to think of collections are as kind of like your own personal sandbox, right? So right now there is no place for you to publish things in a environment that is for your eyes only, right? So that's what I like to think of as what collections are. So, but you raised some really good ideas about talking about like onboarding and other things like that. So I'm sure uses will be used more. Browser favorites, yeah, kind of like browser favorites, sure.
Yep, just with the additional functionality that you can share those favorites with others as well, keeping the permission. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. As far as enabling a layer view by zoom level, there's some pretty awesome trickery that people are doing with map layers. I haven't seen the layering so far. Have you, Sean, run across anything like that? Where you zoom in and more layers start popping up?
I have seen something similar where basically you use parameter actions where using parameter actions, you can click on a particular dimension member of a map layer, which will then populate a parameter, and then you use calculation logic to say if this parameter has something in it, then exclude all of my dimensions at a higher level. And then what that will do is that will basically hide everything at a higher level and let you zoom in. I have not seen anything for zooming out, but yeah. So it could be basically start at a high level, only show one layer at a time as you go down, is what I've seen, which is pretty cool.
Yep, we're about to get that new release, and we'll be ready to start messing with it. So I'm really excited about map layers coming up. So looking at the chat, I think that was all, at least for this portion. So I'll hand it over back to you, Erin.
Sounds good. That's awesome. Yeah, great job, Lucas. It's so fun to see everything that Tableau continues to kind of roll out, and it's so much more helpful to actually see someone demo it instead of just seeing the long list of here are new things you can do. So that's fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and steal the screen sharing, Lucas. And then if someone will give me a quick sanity check that you are seeing our opening Tableau screen here.
Awesome. You're good to go.
Cool beans. Okay, so last but not least, we will dive into starting with a sketch. So we'll probably do the last half hour here, but I will go ahead and promise to upload everything that you're seeing here into Tableau Public, so you can download this, deconstruct it. It's one of my favorite ways to understand sort of what you're seeing demoed. So I love, Sean, all your examples, and Lucas, you had some great ones too from Tableau Public. Maybe we can collect all of those and put those in Slack. And one of the best ways that I've at least found to learn is that you can go ahead and take those and then you can download them and deconstruct them. So my thought when there was a question about like, how did you get the shadow boxes working in that one dashboard, was thinking, oh, just go download that from Tableau Public, open it up and see how it works. And so that can be a really fun way to do it. But I say all that as a preface to say, we'll publish all of this after as well and email that out. And, we're recording this, so you can always check back in as well. Okay, so starting with sketch. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Erin. Hi. I own a small analytics studio here in Kansas City called Data Dozen. You can find me here at datadozen.com. You can also email me, Erin@datadozen.com. And just a big Tableau geek, big data visualization enthusiast. So I feel like I've really found my people here in this group. So what we're going to do today is we are going to walk through 3 different examples of charts that I ended up making for clients that started with a sketch. Interestingly, all these examples happen to be slope charts. So if you're a fan of the slope chart, this hopefully will really jive with you. But the idea here is starting with a sketch will make sure that you're not limiting yourself based on your tool. So when you're in that sort of free form brainstorming phase where you're trying to think, what would the best chart be to answer the question that I have at hand? What's the best chart fit for my data? Start by sketching it out. And I just thought we'd kind of walk through what that looks like. What does it look like to sketch when you're just thinking about what the ideal would be, not thinking about the limitations that your tool might have? This is true whether you're in Power BI or Tableau or Google Data Studio or R or D3, whatever it might be. And then once you've got that sketch, what does it look like to go ahead and try to draft that in your given tool? So obviously here at TUG, we're going to use our favorite Tableau. I thought I'd kind of narrate through some of the problem solving as we take something that is completely free form and try to actually build it in Tableau. And then the last thing is, once you've got a draft, once you've got something that is actually workable, instead of pulling away from your tool, how can you enhance it by leaning into what your tool does well? So once you've got something that's functional, can we enhance that with some more advanced Tableau features? Personally, I love to see advanced Tableau features demoed, things that I don't know about. This is why it's so fun to get to watch Sean or Lucas or Jay or other folks in the community share their work, because you see things that maybe you can't instantly go back and build, but you know that it's possible. So then you can kind of rifle through all of the blog posts and everything that you need at a later date to figure out the step-by-step of how do I build this. But my hope is here that as we sort of draft these things together, that you'll be able to kind of see some of the things that are possible that maybe are new to you. So with that, we're going to be using university data, because that's where I got my start working in academia, in the sort of administration side of things. So I always love to use data sets like this. These are AAU schools, so American Association of American Universities. 63 of the 65, because there are 2 that are in actually Canada. So this is just 63. You can think of them as their top research institutions. So we'll be looking at applications, and we'll be looking at degrees earned. Pretty simple stuff. Here's the first question. In the last 10 years, how has the number of applications changed? So as I'm thinking about this, I've got 10 years of data. I'm going from 2010 to 2019. How many applications? We're just counting them up by year. But I was trying to think, when someone asks that question, and this could be anything, how has our revenue changed in the last 10 years or 100 days or whatever it might be, there's sort of an immediate response that we want, which I'm trying to think about here. So here's the university, here's university A, B, and C. What is the answer to how the number of applications has changed in the last 10 years? An immediate percent change. Okay, it's up 156% from the number of applications in the beginning. But what would I want to show there? I'd love to show the immediate number underneath, thinking back to Sean's KPIs. What's the immediate answer? Show that in text. But then I'd like to do 2 other things. I want to visualize whatever that number is here. If it's 24%, visualize that slope from first to last. That's what we're doing with the slope chart usually, is we've got a beginning and an end, and we're just showing that. But I don't want to lose all the detail in between, because if all of these bars lined up perfectly, it might look like we're hitting each of the top bars. I want to be able to see if there are outliers or up and downs that have happened year over year. So this is kind of what I sketch out. I'm starting with my notebook. Here's the question the client has. How have the number of applications changed in the last 10 years? Here's what I want to try to build. So I'll show you what we end up building, and then we'll build it together. So here's how it ends up working in Tableau. We can figure out how to make this. We've got all of the universities happening here. We've got our big number. How have the number of applications changed? Here's our percent change going from here to here. The cool thing about keeping the number of applications here as well is that we can see outliers. So if we see 135% increase with Penn State, my guess is there's something wild that happened in 2019. They launched a new online program, a new satellite school opened up, something like that. But we're also seeing with the bars what's happening on that detail level without losing that big picture. In the last 10 years, what's the change? 135%. That's what we're up in the number of applications we've received. So that's the idea. So then the question is, how do you actually go about building something like this? So where our goal is going to be to build this guy right here. So let's go ahead and open up a new sheet and think about what is the problem solving as you're drafting, as you're going from a sketch like this. Now you've opened up your tool and you're actually trying to build. What does that look like? So let's do this together. So to start, I've got a discrete year here, 2010 to 2019. So my first intuition is, let's just start by building the components. How does this work? All right, well, I'm going to take my applications and I'm going to add them up over the years. I know I'm just going to want to look at one institution at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and filter this down. And because this is Casey Tug, I'm going to go ahead and find the University of Kansas. And I'm going to go ahead and show the institution name up above. So something starting to come together. Here's the University of Kansas. We've got our years going across here. Gotta move my bar here for Zoom so I can get to everything. So we've got this basic bar chart happening. That's not too hard to build. Okay, so now we want to have our slope. So the question is, like, how would we go about building that? Well, when I think of a slope line, I think first of a line chart. One way I could build that is I could go ahead and just filter it down. So I'm just literally looking at 2010 and 2019. But the problem is, if I use a filter just like that to get to 2010, 2019, I'm losing all of the years that I know I need for my bar chart here. So let's try to fix that. Let's go ahead and add that back in. We're going to take our year filter off. We're going to keep all the years. And we're going to make our bars again. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to create a calculation. It's very simple. That's just going to give us the number of applications for 2010 and 2019. So if I open up this calculation and take a look at it, it's very simple. We're going to ask Tableau, all right, go check out the year. If it's 2010 or it's 2019, then give me the applications. I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to go ahead and bring out this calculation. So now what I've got is I can see it's working. I've got my 2010 number of applications for KU, 10.6, same here. And I've also got my 2019. Now, if I want to actually change this, I'm going to my marks card for it, and I want to make it a line, except right now, the problem is I've got 8 null values that are showing up here. So I've got a line here, or a dot here and a dot here. I want to be able to connect those lines, even though I've got my 8 null values here. I always tell people, when you see the null value indicator, you should know what's happening. You should know why it's there. So let's go ahead and click that null value instead of filtering out the data, because if I do that, I'm going to lose my 2011 through 2018 years. Let's go ahead and show it at the default position. All right, so I'm getting closer. I have a line, but it doesn't connect. I want to format what's happening with these null values. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say format. My data pane swaps out for my formatting pane. I'm going to go up to the fields and select that calculation we made that's just the application number for the start and the end. I'm going to click that, go to the pane. So the access is going to be the stuff happening on the side. The pane is going to control the actual marks of the data in the inside. And I'm going to come down here to special values. So the example they give is, what are we going to do with our null values? That's exactly what I have here. So I'm going to take my marks, and instead of showing them at a default value, which isn't a bad guess to say 0, although 0 and a null value are two very different things, but it's not a bad guess. Here, I'm going to actually change this to hiding them and say connect the lines. So when I do that, now I get my line. This is my slope from 2010 to 2019 without needing to filter out the years that are in between. And now, if you're a Tableau guru, you probably know where we're going with this. I'm going to go ahead and make this a dual axis. So I'm going to say share an axis here. I'm going to say, make sure you synchronize this. Again, Sean mentioned something earlier. It's like, why does Tableau, when you do a multi-select filter, not default to showing the apply button? I don't know why, when you make a dual axis, why Tableau does not default to making a synchronized axis, but it doesn't. So when this should line up with this, and this should line up with this, take a look at your 2 y-axes and make sure you right click. Let's sync those up. From here, I'm in pretty good shape. I can go ahead and go to my line, add my little markers, and I'm going to go ahead and hide this extra header. I'm going to go ahead and let this go up to standard entire view and let this kind of spread out. Okay, so we now have the baseline happening here. I would say, in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to rotate these labels, our basic idea from our sketch is here. But if you remember, back to Sean's idea about the KPI, and you want the big number right up front. In the last 10 years, how has the number of applications changed? We want to be able to help people know what that % change actually is. And while we have shown you here what the beginning and the end, that slope goes up or down or is flat, it's, we can see sort of by that angle what we're dealing with. It'd be really nice if we actually, without having to do the math ourselves, told our audience, all right, the difference between our 10,653 applications to here to 1593, what is that % change, and add that up here. So let's go ahead and make that calculation. Now, when I tend to do calculations, I tend to like to make a space just for the calculations to test these out. So I could just show this to you and say, here's where it is, but this might look a little overwhelming, and it's actually not that overwhelming. So I want to go ahead and build it out in a space where you can see, how are we actually going to get to the point that we have this 42% sitting in a header that will extrapolate out to all of the universities individually, looking at that % change from the first year to the last year, which in the big picture is what we're asking here. In the last 10 years, how has the number changed? So let's go ahead and make ourselves a new little space here. We'll make a new worksheet. Here's what I like to do. As we think about problem solving this out, I've got my years here. I've got, if I look at just the start and end calculation, and I go ahead and filter this down to just KU. Let's see, University of Kansas. here's the percent change that I'm hoping to calculate. I want to be able to take the number of 15,000 here minus the 10,000, then divide it over the 10,000 and see how much increase, what the percent change here has been. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and start by creating a calculated field. And I'll call this my header. And I'm going to do demo so I can see the difference. So here's one of the strategies I like to use. So to start, I'm going to say if the year equals 2010, which is the first number I'm trying to get, then give me the number of applications. So what I'll do is it'll say it's valid. Never trust that it's valid. I'm going to clear this sheet and I'm going to go ahead and pull that out and see when I take this back to just KU. There we are. What do I get? There's my 10, 6, 5, 3. This is where it's helpful to have a little notebook on the side. You're jotting down the numbers. You can also always use the caption field. You can make this little text box appear for you, and you could put numbers that you're trying to hit, or just kind of scratch notes to yourself. So there's my 2010 number. Then I'm going to leave that going, and I'm going to say, okay, now I need to get that, but I need to get it. I need to first get the 2019 number and then subtract it. And the reason I'm kind of demoing how I would do this is to show you that as you're problem solving, as you're making your calculations in Tableau, a lot of times it can be helpful to start actually very small in your calculation. Don't try to do the whole world at once. Make the one portion of your calculation and then keep working from there. So I've got my 2019 calculations, and then I'm going to subtract my 2010 calculations. I'm going to say apply. It's going to break because it's a different level of aggregation. I'm going to pull that back out, say, yep, that's what I'm getting. So if I look back here and I take this 2010 to 2019 difference, that's the number I should get. Great. Okay, now I need a percent difference here. So I'm going to keep making my header, and I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, wrap that all up and divide that by our starter number, our 2010. Oh, and every once in a while you'll do that where it pastes actually into a data set. You can just close that out. You can say it'll all be okay. We'll come back to where we are, go back to our demo calculation. So I'm going to wrap this all up, say, all right, that's your big number, and I'm going to divide that by our 2010. Okay, calculation is valid. That doesn't mean anything to us. We want to make sure it's accurate. So when I see this, now I'm seeing what I want. I'm seeing that percentage. I'm going to go ahead and make that default property a percent, no decimals. They don't add anything to the conversation. So I'm going to kick those additional decimals out. There's my 42%. So at this point, I think my header is working. When I take this over, what I want is that 42%, if I look at my example here, to sit right under the University of Kansas. But when I take this out and I try to make it just a discrete number, I get null values all the way here. If I put it on the other side of year, I still get my null value here. And the reason is it's trying to calculate this for every single year that we have broken down. This is when we need a level of detail calculation. So a lot of times when you hear LOD calcs, if you're newer to Tableau, you're like, I don't know what that means. A level of detail calculation is going to be a calculation that you need to create that is at a different level of detail than your visualization. So here, we need to have a calculation that renders for the University of Kansas, but not the University of Kansas broken down by every single year. The level of detail of our visualization, which needs a bar chart per year, is different than the level of detail that we need for this number here, which is the University of Kansas. I want a different one for every single university, but I don't want a different one for every single year. When that is the case, you saw Lucas use the fixed function earlier. Here, we can use the exclude function. So here, I can go ahead and exclude the year, the discrete year copy I've got, and I can go ahead and wrap this all up. And when I apply that, it's going to break it. I'm going to pull it off and take this up one more time. You can see now it's an attribute, make it discrete. And then here's my 42% with underneath my header at a different level of detail. Exclude is a function that's going to take everything else you put in your visualization into context. So it is going to look at the University of Kansas. It's going to look at everything else that's happening, but it's going to exclude the one variable that you told it, ignore this. It doesn't matter. You don't need to take that into your calculation. Here, we want it to ignore the different years. We don't want a percent difference for all of these different years. We literally just want a percent change from 2010 to 2019, which we have put in our header here. So the neat thing about that is that then we can go ahead and we could format this. We could make this much bigger. We can match it color-wise, make it bold, make sure that we're making it clear that this 42% matches what we've got here with our line. So we're leaning into all of the formatting enhancements that you can do with Tableau. We can clean this up. And now if we take off our institution name filter, we can actually go ahead and say, let's make this standard. And we can scooch this stuff in. So we're looking at several universities at the same time. And we can see how this starts to propagate out. Here, I've actually sorted all of the institution names by that calculation that we just made, that percent change calculation. So it goes from the biggest percent change to the smallest. And you can actually go, if you slide all the way over, we can see that actually both WashU and St. Louis and MU, both Missouri schools, are going to be sitting kind of flat. So they've had some increase, but if you ask just about the last 10 years, they are sitting pretty flat. I actually think Tulane is really interesting here, where the extra level of detail we've added with the bars is really helpful, because here's the headline, here's the KPI, like Sean was saying earlier, in the last 10 years, how the number of applications changed. Well, we're down 4%, but actually that's a huge milestone here, or a positive thing, to be back up to that 42,000 application mark after hitting a low of 26.2 here in 2015. So there is how we went from our sketch to our university applications all being put here. So I'll pause there. I'm going to pause in between the three examples here and take a look at the chat to see if any questions. What font? Is that, I'm not sure if that was for me or for Lucas.
I'm not sure. He was, it came up while you were showing your sketch. So I think he was just commenting on how nice your handwriting is.
Oh, that's font a la Waldron, and that's me. Yeah. So, but probably filled with typos, because not the best speller in the world. Although I've been assured that has nothing to do with intelligence. So I'm going to go ahead and believe that for now. All right. So that's our first example here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our second example here. So I'll put the chat up here, and we'll jump to our second. So we talked earlier about applications, how many people are coming into the universities. Eventually, for me, it was in, I think, my sophomore year. By the end of the sophomore year, you had to declare a major, which, prompted a lot of quarter life crises for people. I was at least not in a university that was big enough to make me decide something up front. So if you then think about, everyone comes in, now which departments have they enrolled in and where are they getting their degrees? Because what we actually have in this data set is outcome data, how many folks actually earned degrees. The question is, which departments have become lopsided when it comes to gender enrollment and graduation? And those are actually two things you could tease apart, but I'm conflating them here for simplicity's sake. When we look at the departments, if I'm in the anthropology department or the English department or the physics department, what does the enrollment or the degrees earned look like with men compared to women? So there was this great talk, and I've linked to it in the dashboard in the caption, that I attended at TC18, I believe, that was called Metaphorically Vising. So it was very fun talk, and it was metaphorical vising. The idea that the presenter talked through was she would look for what are sort of the big picture things that we're talking about in our analysis, and are there ways to draw metaphors from the things we see in our world. So when I think of really lopsided things, I tend to think of like a seesaw, something that is going to be really unbalanced potentially. And so when I think of this sketch, the idea that I had was, could you make one shape per department? And could you set it up so that you could see really quickly which departments are pretty much even? Again, men on the left or women on the right, wouldn't really matter which way. But the departments that are going to have graduation rates where men and women are coming out with the same number of degrees, they're conferring the same number of degrees for men and women, versus departments that are really going to be stark, where their slope is going to be really pronounced, and you're going to have this lopsided effect of a ton of men or women receiving the degree and very few of the opposite gender. And then you could line these up by those percentages so that you could really quickly see which ones have the most lopsided sort of department in terms of their degree conferments, and which ones are sort of in the middle. They're pretty 50-50 split. So this was the idea. And this is what it looks like when we actually go ahead and build it in Tableau. So what we've got here is one, and this isn't surprising. So transportation doesn't surprise me that much. Then we get into basically all of our STEM degrees. So we've got engineering, comp sci, engineering, technologies and engineering gets broken out by the way the AAU breaks out this data. You could concatenate those if you wanted. Physical sciences, math and statistics, these two I find very interesting, having gone to liberal arts school, being a poetry major myself, very much in the humanities world. Philosophy and history are sort of notoriously male-dominated fields, even though they are in the humanities. And then we're starting to even out here a little bit. So we've got this marker line you can see at the 50% happening with each of these grids. We've got business, architecture, social sciences. We switch now to slightly more women than men, but law enforcement, firefighting, homeland security, all of that is actually pretty even in terms of degrees conferred. Parks and rec, agriculture, interestingly, higher for women than men. And then we start moving into things. When we look at really lopsided enrollment here, we're looking at family and consumer sciences. It makes you think of the sort of stereotypical women go to home ec and men are off to shop class in high school. You can see that happening still in 2019 with these graduation rates. Health professions, different note than physical sciences. So you have to have a bio degree or a chemistry degree to go to med school. What does it look like if you're going into more health professions, but you're not going to get that MD? Education, psychology, ethnic, cultural, gender studies, English lit, this was me, communication journalism, foreign languages, and so on and so forth. So this was the idea behind it, is sort of, this is less precise potentially in your interpretation, but potentially more immediate in understanding which of these departments are having this lopsided effect between men and women. So then the question becomes, from a sketch, how do you actually start to build this? So let's walk through, once again, the problem solving here. We'll make a new worksheet and we'll go ahead and start to try to build this. So if I think of my sketch, to start, I know I at least need men and women, and I'm looking for an area chart on either side. So let's start there. I know my columns need to be men and women, so I'm gonna take my gender out. Here we go, men, women, okay. I know what I'm actually calculating. What's the measure behind this? I know that that's my number of degrees completed. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring out my number of completions. Really fascinating right off the bat, in 2019, the top research institutions in the nation, more women got degrees than men. So that's really interesting off the top. And here, I'm not actually looking for raw numbers. I want to see a percent of total. So I'm going to change that to be 48% men, 52% women. I'm changing that number of degrees to be a percentage split instead of the raw numbers. And now what I actually want here is an area chart. So I want to go from the two different bars to actually having that slope. And if I kind of, pull this out a little bit, I'm not too far off from where I started. So that's a good start. So now what I'm thinking is, okay, my sketch, I want one of these per program. So I'm going to go ahead and come back here. And I'm going to take program, and I'm going to say, all right, give me one per column here. And I start to see some promising things happening on the screen. Now you'll notice that now my percentage calculation here is off. It's calculating it across the entire table. I want to go ahead and change that back to gender so that for each of these programs, I've got both genders splitting the 100%. You'll notice now our axis actually jumps up to 100%, which tells me there are some in here that are going to be really stark. Here's theology and vocation. It's 100% women and men, which makes me ask, all right, how many actual degrees are completed here? So I'm going to throw that on the tooltip, and I see 126 and 0. And I start thinking, all right, I may want to kick out any programs that are really tiny. So to do that, I'm going to take a little tangent here. I'm going to look at the programs. I'm going to look at how many completions I've got. I'm going to go ahead and sort these. And I can actually see that in addition to some really tiny ones here, I've actually got 3 that are null values. They don't have any data there, which tells me that those are things that the National Center for Education Statistics collects, but that these high research institutions don't offer programs in them. So I'm actually going to put an arbitrary threshold here for my analysis. I'm going to say, all right, anything above 200 degrees conferred in 2019, I'm going to make this a set and say, all right, these are my keepers. And when I do that, then I've got my program keepers right here in my set. I can take this to my filter, and I'm going to filter out anyone that's not there. The last thing I want to do is I want to be able to sort these by, instead of just alphabetically, which again, a little tip is if things are sorted alphabetically, maybe find something that's a little more intuitive to help help folks out. So the thing I want to do is I actually want to sort these by in one direction, either from the highest male enrollment down to men to women, or vice versa. So what I did is I created a little calculation here that's just take the number of completions that are just for women, divided over the total number of completions, so I can get a percentage of how many women were here. So that's basically just calculating the right side of my slopes here. And then I can sort my programs. Take these, and I can go ahead and sort by a field, and I say, all right, go ahead and do that by the percent. Women completing, I'm going in ascending order. And if I look at this entire thing at once, I see where things start to even out and where they start to get really stark. Another thing I did just for a little extra effect is I made one of these just a line chart so that I get a line with my little bumpers there. Same thing as before. I'm going to go ahead and make this a dual axis, and I'm going to sync these. We'll go ahead and hide that. So what you're seeing really quickly is where are the programs that are pretty stark, but to get all of this on the screen starts to really exaggerate these angles in a way that's not as legible as I'd like. And again, my initial sketch had these kind of stacked in this grid, or you'll see it called a trellis in your Tableau world. So I actually saw the trellis used, this grid, all in one sort of visualization used for the first time actually with a Tableau Public dashboard that Sean published. And what I did was I downloaded it and I deconstructed it, and I found these 2 axes. So these 2 calculations, some brilliant person, I remember following the original math back to, Sean, can you help me? I'm trying to remember who the original, I'll put it in the notes, but the original math, who it came from for figuring out the trellis.
Way back when, I think it was like, we're talking early, we're talking like 2013, 2012. I think it was like Joe Mako is the name that comes to mind. Yeah.
I remember following the tangent, and I followed the tangent all the way back to that original blog post. We'll find it for you guys and include it. And I remember actually taking a half day to figure out why this math actually works. Basically, it comes down to square roots. So if you take, the square root of 49, it's 7, then you can create a grid that looks like this, that would be, 7 by 7. So what it's going to look at, if you look at that math again, it's going to look at the math of saying, all right, what's the size of the thing that you're going to look at? In our case, it's going to be how many programs do we have? And it's going to take the square root of it. I show you this as someone who would not be able to come up with this math independently, and is very grateful that other people in the Tableau community have added it and made it public. And now I use it all the time. So I've got my 2 calculations here that I've copied and pasted from other brilliant people. And all I have to do here is add my axis, my grid axis for x-axis, my grid calc for the y-axis. I'm going to move my program now to detail, and I'm going to show, say, compute using your fancy square root calculation by the program. And I'm going to do that with both of these. And voila, there we go. So what it does is it calculates a number. You can see that this x-axis based on program looks at how many programs I'm looking at and gives me basically an XY coordinate, a 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1 through 5. And then I can just hide these and don't have to worry, or not hide those. We'll hiding them will not do. We can just unshow the label or the header here. And now I've got my grid working all in one visualization. So it's nice, it's succinct. Sometimes when this is your goal, what you'll see is people create one visualization for the first row, one visualization for the second row, one visualization for the third row. And the reason that gets pretty clunky pretty quickly is if I want to change, for example, the way that these programs are sorted, let's say instead of going from the men-dominated one, I want to go to the women-dominated first by how I'm sorting these programs, I then have to go recreate all of those individual rows as opposed to having this grid or this trellis where I can affect all of them at once. So I've got this set up. The last thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and color these by whether we're sitting in a slightly more female or male dominated field. The way I did that is very similar. I'll open this up to the exclude that we already used before. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, all right, add up all of the women degrees, divide that by the number of completions. That will tell me, 30% women earned these degrees, 80% in this program. If this is greater than our 5%, then we're going to call that women. Otherwise, we're going to call it men. But we have to exclude our axis down here, or here's what we get. I'll show you, because I feel like seeing sometimes, seeing how LOD calcs actually work can be really helpful if we look at them in the wild. So I'm going to go ahead and take that calculation, call it demo for the color. We're going to add up all of the women earned degrees, take it over the entire degree, and we're going to say, all right, if that's greater than 5%, give me true, otherwise give me false. And when I do that, demo color, we'll say okay. You can see the problem is that that's going to be true every time we're on the women's side of the slope and false every time we're on the man's side of the slope. So what we need is something that is going to ignore whether you're on the male or the woman's side of things. So we want to exclude gender. And you can see how this works. This is the same LOD calc. I want a calculation that's operating at a different level of detail than my visualization. The level of detail for the visualization is determined by everything you've brought in here. So if you've got a dimension, in this case, gender, sitting somewhere on your worksheet, it's going to be taking that into account. So here we want to go ahead and say exclude gender. We're going to add our little curly bracket. And if I say apply, I'm going to bring it back out. Now I've got that split happening where it's taking in everything, it's considering everything I've brought into my visualization, every pill I've dropped anywhere except for gender, which means that I can get a color for each program based on whether there were more men or women walking away with the degree. So that is how we end up creating something that looks like this. And also when I publish this, just note that metaphorically vising is sitting in the caption here as well, because I thought that talk was really well done. Here's one thing I'll say. When you start with a sketch, it's very easy. And then you work so darn hard to figure out how to make it in Tableau. It's very easy to get emotionally attached to this. So when I work with clients, usually it's like, all right, what's the question? What are we exploring? And then I'll go build 2, 3, 4 different takes on the same question. What's the best chart to answer that question? Gosh, let's just get in there and build a little bit and see what we find. There's a great quote that I think was originally Faulkner, and then I think Stephen King brought it back around, which was, in writing, you have to be willing to kill your darlings, which is pretty fitting for Stephen King. But the idea there, it's a very common phrase in writing. You'll hear people in writing workshops and writing degrees throwing it around all the time. be willing to kill your darlings. What it means is when you've poured your heart and soul into this stanza, this line, this paragraph, this chapter, and in the big picture, it actually doesn't move you forward for what you're trying to actually make happen in your visualization or in your writing piece. You have to be willing to grab the hatchet and get rid of sections that are no longer serving the broader purpose. I say that because depending on what you're trying to build, one of the other alternatives, after all of this work, from this beautiful sketch to this beautiful slope and seeing the metaphorical vising, I was so excited about this visualization and having figured out how to make it, we ended up going with a stacked bar. So this is really intuitive for people to look at and understand pretty immediately. We spend a lot more time looking at stacked bars than we do slopes between men and women and the degrees they've earned. So it depends. The right chart for answering the question at hand is going to depend so much on your audience. How much time do they have? How much are they willing to invest in understanding the visualization? How much experience do they have with that chart type? And if the amount of experience they have with the given chart that you figured out how to create, maybe from your beautiful sketch, might not be as immediate as it needs to be for their time constraints as an audience, then there may be times where you kill the darling. You go, oh, I went from my sketch to my beautiful visualization, and then we ended up going with something that takes me about 2 minutes to create in Tableau. So all that to say that as you're sketching, one of the sort of caveats to keep in mind is if you sketch something that you cannot figure out how to easily build in Tableau, or you can, but it's so incredibly dense and difficult to maintain, it's not worth the impact that you get in delivering your data that way to your audience, let it go. And if what you finally figure out how to create still doesn't actually communicate effectively with your audience, there are some audiences where this is going to be a much better fit than this, even though this was a Herculean feat to figure out how to translate, and this took 2 minutes. This is where, as we talk about, working with stakeholders, whether they're in the C-suite or, their colleagues, one way that sketching can be really helpful is a huge amount of time saving. So if I draw this and I draw this and someone goes, that's what I want, then this takes me just minutes to put together and we can have that going on its way. So slight tangent, but just to say, be willing also to, if you successfully go from your sketch to your visualization, be willing to kill your darlings, as they say in the writing world. All right, I'll pause there, see if there's any questions. Check the chat here. Willing to kill your charts, exactly. Yes, counterpoint. So alphabetical sorting, perfect if someone is looking for their thing. So if they are coming in here and they're looking for engineering and they have no clue where engineering is in here, then either having it set up in a way that is alphabetical so they can find it, or if it's hard to contextualize engineering, if they don't have the sort set up around them, then having a highlight feature. In fact, let me see if I could pull that up. They say show highlighter for program. Oh, move the chat, and then I can say where is engineering. Then they can highlight where they're at immediately without losing the sort that might be functional. So that can be a really good, I feel like this highlight button, Sean, you were talking earlier about things that are underutilized. The highlighter can be a great way to sort in a way that is productive in terms of contextualizing the individual marks that someone will be interested in once they found it, but helping them get to the thing that they care about right away. So absolutely. Perfect. Okay. I'm a tangent when talking about slows, yes. How does one do the highlight button? Perfect. I'll go ahead and show that real fast. So I wanted to show the highlight button for programs. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. So you can do it from a couple places. You could come to the program. In this case, I'm using the aliases that I made that were shorter. You can say under, instead of show highlighter, I feel like, nope, it's not there. You got to add it somewhere on your visualization, it looks like, and then you can either show the filter, which could be a quick way to do it, or show highlighter, and then that will bring up your little box here. And what's nice is if you click on it and you, it already comes with a list that, if that dimension has a list that's pre-populated, you can start to find it. That can be a helpful way. Again, people, when they land on a visualization, we're all self-centered. We want to find ourselves immediately. So when I'm looking at this, I'm immediately like, where are the literature folks? English lit, those are my people. And having that highlight button can pull someone in right away to see what they're doing. Okay. Last one here. So originally I started exploring this, then I started thinking, okay, how do some of the departments are very lopsided in the number of degrees. If I just want to see if I look at men or if I look at women, which degrees they're most interested in, where, if you rank them, what do they look like? This was something that was an exploratory visualization that I built to start. So if I want to look at this, what I ended up doing was just saying, all right, give me the number of degrees. This is 2019, AAU, all right, engineering for men. And then I would toggle to women. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, engineering here is 7th. Oh, wait, okay, but there are social sciences here. And then I would toggle back to them and be like, where? So, oh, they're 3rd. Okay, well, that's not too far away. Where's business management? Okay, 2nd here for men. I'm gonna toggle back to the women. Where's business? Oh, it's 3rd, not too far away. The other thing I noticed was that the distribution here is different. Women tend to be a little bit more distributed. Men, you can see a little bit more concentration in a couple of fields, very STEM heavy up here at the top. So this project started with more exploring the data to start and then going to the sketchpad and saying, I wish I had something that could show both charts at the same time. Give me the magnitude, because this distribution is going to look different than for men versus women, but then help create something that really easily is going to take me from both sides. So if I'm like, okay, well, engineering over here, where is that over here? That I can see very quickly between the two. And so this ended up with another take on a slope chart, this time with rank. So what I want is something that ends up looking kind of like this. And the interactivity here is a highlight feature where I'm going to be able to say, okay, social sciences 1, 2, but I'm quickly seeing where is that. So this is where psychology takes a huge dive for women. If I'm over here with men, engineering, you see that 7th ranked for women. And then I can still see the actual magnitude. I go ahead and set these axes so they both go to 30,000, so they're equal, and then have that highlight feature run based on the program. So here, the last thing that I'll show kind of problem solving through is how to actually build this guy. This is the rank. In the middle, the bar charts, I'm guessing you understand, they are building out for women, duplicate, get it all aesthetically set up, duplicate it for men, and flip the axis. That's all that's happening there. But for the rank, let's look at how we built this. So once again, if I'm looking at my sketch, I know I've got this split men and women. So I need gender and columns again. And I want this ranked for the number of degrees, not actually the magnitude. So kind of a similar problem set to get started. I'm going to go to gender. I'm going to put that again, men and women. And then I'm going to go to the number of completions, get the same start as I had for that initial slope chart. Now what I want is 1 dot per program. So I'm going to take program and put that on detail, starting to get closer to the number of marks that I need. I'm going to go ahead and kick out any of the programs that I don't want. I'm getting the 29 programs that have at least 200 degrees in the year. And now, instead of making this a bar chart, I'm going to change the mark type to a circle. Now, really quickly, the number of men getting engineering degrees jumps to the top. And then what I actually want, though, is instead of the magnitude, I want this ranked. So I'm going to come over to my number of completions. These are the degrees, and I'm going to change this to rank. I don't just want 1 rank. I want 1 per program. So I get 29 rank dots all the way from the top. Now what I can see is this is working. Here's 1 engineering, 2 business, 3 social sciences, then comp sci. And if I come back over here, that's what I've got in my bar chart. So I can see that my rank is working. If I check the women, I'm seeing the same thing. 1 social sciences, biomed, business, this is working. Now what I want to do is I need to flip this axis. So I'm going to go ahead and reverse it, get the rank at the top. And then this is pretty simple. I'm going to make these smaller, make them a little bigger. And then what I want is a line connecting them. So right now I've got this as a circle. I'm going to hold down my command key on a Mac and duplicate this. And I'm going to try this one more way where I'm going to change this mark type instead of a circle to a line. And what you'll see is there's what we're looking for. There's the social sciences down to the social sciences, ranked 1 for men, for women, 3 for men. Then I see there's my engineering, huge discrepancy, going 1 to 7. So now it's a matter of lining these up. So for the 3rd time today, we're leveraging that dual axis. You can see again, these are not synced, these are reversed. So you got to sync that, and then we're gonna have it all lined up. So there's 1, 1, 2, 2, but we've got this mark working as well. Then from there, it's all aesthetics. So we can get the color working, we can add the label, whatever we want to kind of clean that up. And then we just put it on a dashboard where we've got all 3, our rank slope, our bar chart for women, bar chart for men. Then we just go up to the dashboard and we add that highlight feature that is just going to highlight whether you land on the bar charts for men or women or the slope, and whether you're targeting, we're going to target all 3 of them, highlight just the program information when you hover. So I say, okay, okay. And that's how I'm getting that, that feature to pull us through. So what I hope from this, I hope what you're taking away from it is, where can sketching be a helpful either A, communication piece between you and your stakeholder or you and your audience? B, where can it be helpful to kind of unhinge yourself from Tableau a little bit? I've sketched many things that I cannot figure out how to build in Tableau, or I figure out how to build and then it's overly complex in terms of maintenance and not worth it. Helpful to think of Brito's law there and 80-20, and 20% of our output coming from, or 20% of our inputs creating 80% of our outputs. Where should our time and energy actually go? But sketching being this way to actually get started and then get in the tool, or start with the tool, come out to sketch, and then go back and see if you can build what you're after. I also hope you got a few sort of demo of some more advanced Tableau things, the exclude for the LOD, using the trellis, the highlight feature, and seeing how that might work as you lay out different dashboards. And so with that, we will promise to share the YouTube recording. We will promise to share all of the resources that we mentioned in our email out to everyone afterwards, and we'll put those in Slack as well so that you have all of that there. And with that, let me just check any that works. All right, any other questions? I think we are all set. Okay, so with that, I'll open it back up. Sean, Lucas, anything else to add as we wrap up here? We are, as we said, we're skipping August, and we'll be back in September. So I took a screenshot of all the ideas you guys generated at the top of the show, and we'll try to bring some of those to you. And if you're considering maybe thinking about being interested in presenting as well, don't hesitate to let us know. We promise if you decide it's not for you, we won't force you to do anything you're not excited about, but don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if there's something that you'd like to share with the group.
Yep, absolutely. Just to reiterate what Erin said, we're always looking for ideas. So even if you're not like, I don't think I want to put together a presentation, but I'd really like to learn something about level of detail calculations or dual axis charts or whatever it is, please don't hesitate to let us know what you want to learn about. I say it frequently, and I'll keep saying it. This is your tug. This is not Erin and I and Lucas's tug. This is your tug. So please tell us what you want to learn about. And we will have a wonderful August. Stay cool, stay safe, wear your mask, get vaccinated, all that fun stuff. And we will see you all hopefully very soon in September.
Sounds great. All right, everyone. We're gonna, like, when I press end, the whole thing collapses. So
That's right.
if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, we will wait for that YouTube recording, and then we will send out our follow-up email with all the resources we mentioned here today. So thank you so much. And until then, go Royals.
Yes.
We'll see you soon. Bye.